Gen Z, millennial, new age consumer, they don't have that much money. You will see brands that are Gen Z girls would absolutely die for, and they're in TJ Maxx. Why would you do that? You know, your brand is so luxurious and it's so, you know, people love it. Like, why would you stoop down to that level? These retailers have done a great job investing in their assortment so that cool brands are actually there. As long as you're breaking even on the deal or you're making a little bit of money, you're getting out there and you're acquiring a customer potentially. And the goal is that the next time that they're in Target or the next time they're online, they're going to buy your product again.
Matt, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
How about you give us introduction, your background, and why you start this business?
Yeah, great to meet you as well, Santiago. I've been in the CPG industry now for about 8 years, mostly in sort of the retail sales space, and started out with a very large company called Zuru. Originally a toy business, moved into consumer goods. I was doing a lot of retail sales for their brands in the US, so selling to Target, Walmart, Ulta, Kroger, CVS, all the sort of big box retailers here. And off the back of that, got some great experience. Started a company called Newground with 2 other guys. We were fractional sales and marketing consultants for international brands. Again, trying to help them expand into the retail market here. Did that for 2 years, then exited and started Common Shelf. And we're essentially a brokerage, a niche brokerage in what is considered the off-price retail space. So that is retailers like TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Burlington, Ross. They carry everyday brands that you would see elsewhere online. But often at a discount. And they have this sort of surprise treasure hunt element. So when you walk in the store, you don't know exactly what you're going to get, but you do know you're going to get a deal. And those stores have become increasingly popular over the last 5 to 10 years. There's no one really doing a good job in the brokerage space, helping brands navigate that retail landscape. So I sort of saw the opportunity, saw more American consumers shopping in these stores, and decided to Common Shelf about 14 months ago.
Nice. Interesting. There are so many changes in the retail space. There are lots of like department store they are closing. How the e-commerce player will be in the game.
What we're finding is that consumer sentiment is at an all-time low. Disposable income, like cash on hand, is not very high. People don't have a lot of savings. So they're constantly deal hunting, and value and price has become of the utmost importance to the American consumer. So they're increasingly trying to, move towards retailers that are offering that discount. That's why you've seen retailers like Walmart do exceptionally well. Target's done a good job more recently. Everything is about the deal. You're going there for the discount. You don't even know what you're going to buy, but you know you're going to get exciting stuff there. And I think because of all these sort of macro trends have come together, these stores have really flourished. They've invested a lot in their assortment. So traditionally, TJ Maxx, Marshalls have been more an apparel outlet. You can go there to get like old Nike or old Lululemon. And they still have those things, but they've increasingly put a lot of money and investment into their consumables and non-apparel categories. And the consumer is really recognizing that and increasingly shopping these stores. And you can see that with this, the stock price of TJX, which is the parent company of TJ Maxx and Marshalls, Ross, Burlington. All of them are doing exceptionally well at a corporate level. They're leaning into that sort of consumer trend of hunting for a deal, and they've been doing exceptionally well. With Walmart also. It's coincided with the rise of e-commerce, and I think really the name of the game this day and age is what is called in the industry like omni-channel, appearing online but also in store. It's actually interesting. The Gen Z millennial consumer is starting to come back into the store. They want to discover new products. They want to get out there and walk around a store and I think this may be an element of being human, just trying to like literally walk in there, and as opposed to searching for everything online, you're actually trying to go out and see things. And so the name of the game these days for a lot of these e-com sellers is, how do I navigate not only my direct to consumer Amazon business, but how do I then take it to the next level and show up in store? So that's a lot of what I do. I work with a lot of brands that are, on TikTok Shop or D2C that want to move into the retail landscape.
Got it. I want to get more detail about retailer, because we see there are so many types of retailer, just like Walmart. It's kind of like off-price off, but also it's like mass department store, right? So why do you think department store is dying?
I think that the department stores were very slow to recognize some of these trends. They've been sort of traditionally selling more high-end, or what we would call like mastige or like prestige goods, which there are plenty of Americans that can purchase those types of products. But I think because a lot of those stores and specialty stores, like for example, an Ulta or Sephora, have become so popular and so relevant to the new consumer, the department stores don't have that much to offer anymore. And then that combined with e-commerce, they were slow to devise their, a new strategy. So, they were these bulky storefronts. They weren't really, leaning into the digital age, not a lot of social media presence, not a lot of changes to their assortment. And I think they just got caught. And unfortunately, it was sort of too late, and a lot of them have now been bankrupt. Ironically, a lot of these off-price retailers like TJ Maxx and Ollie's and Ross, Burlington, they're actually moving into those stores. So like the old JCPenney stores, the old Nordstrom, Neiman Marcus, Saks stores, they're actually moving in there because they've realized if they can have an assortment that is digitally native and socially relevant, then they can actually acquire that customer in the store. So what I mean by that is they're actually building an assortment that is digital first. So they're saying, okay, what is trending on social media? What products can we put in the stores that are actually going to be relevant to that consumer that is always on their phone? And the old department stores didn't really realize that, but these newer stores, combined with obviously the best prices and the discounts they're offering, realizes that, even in the store, the customer is on their phone. So if you can bring brands in that are relevant, that people know, that people trust because of the social media presence or the D2C presence, then it's sort of a win-win. So that combined with like exceptionally good prices is sort of why they're continuing to perform well.
Yeah. So it's really depend on how the business owner, if they are thinking digital first, or AI first, how they should innovate those things into their existing business.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's the real difference when we talk about off price, but different retailers, they also have different positioning?
Retailers like TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Ollie's, Ross, Burlington, Bells, and they are similar to a Walmart or Target, but they're more apparel based, and they're discounters. So traditionally, these have been like closeout discount opportunities for brands that want to move excess inventory or expiring inventory. That's sort of traditionally how they started, and that's what actually a lot of the apparel category at these retailers was sort of made up. Like Nike would launch a jacket, people didn't really want it, they'd have 1 million units left over, they'd sell it to the store. But they're increasingly becoming hubs for new age relevant brands that are actually selling every day. It's a great strategy, and the perception of these stores has changed dramatically. So they're no longer considered these places where you sort of just dump inventory. You can still find stuff like that there, absolutely. But they're increasingly becoming places to find new, exciting products, especially socially relevant products, which is why I'm sort of in the space, because I see that change. So you could go to a TJ Maxx and find a product at Ulta, or that's at Whole Foods, or that's at Target, but you're going to get a better price at TJ Maxx because they have to have a discount. It's their business model.
But TJ Maxx, most case they want like branding item, right? If the e-commerce seller haven't got a very good branding, how can they just work with the TJ Maxx?
The beauty of something like a TJX or a Ross or Burlington is they buy new products every week. Okay, it's not a guarantee that you're going to sell in there. You obviously have to sell your products, and if it works, hopefully it works. But you have the ability to move in there every week. You automatically get awareness to millions of shoppers, and if it does well, they will continue to buy it time and time again. So it's a great way and a quicker way for brands to get exposure in the retail landscape. They are looking for brands as well. They do like the big brands that are elsewhere, but depending on your category, they're really looking for things that are trending, right? That what's the white space in their beauty assortment? What food product are they not carrying that's really doing well? And so there absolutely is an opportunity for brands that are quote unquote like unproven or that are still small and scaling to enter into these stores. And that's sort of why I like to work with them as well, is because they're willing to take risks, right? Because the worst thing that happens for them is they bring it into the shelf, it doesn't work, they just don't buy it again. Hopefully we're able to work with one of our partner brands, get them in, and then we're consistently growing that business over time. That's the goal. But oftentimes, it's easier for e-com brands to do that because it's not a heavy lift. It's not very expensive, and it can happen in as little as a few weeks.
The way how they purchase from the seller, are they require price protection? They have to be the lowest price in the market.
It's not like legally, contractually, yes. Not that. I don't even know if they can technically do that. It's more of like a handshake thing. So there are some sensitivities between retailers in terms of where you can sell products. In the US, the way you control the retail price that Walmart or even TJ Maxx sells it at is the cost that you provide to them. So basically that is really what dictates most usually what the retailer is able to offer it at. So you need to give Ross a cost that would allow them, based on the typical margin that they need, to retail the product at a price that is less than elsewhere.
So the cost is the price they are allowed to sell, or is the cost is the price they are purchased from you?
The wholesale cost is what the brand is selling to Ross at. So let's say that's $3 a unit or $5 a unit. Then the retailer will take their margin and they will resell that good to their customer for $10, $11, $12, whatever margin they need. But the negotiation happens on the wholesale cost at the bottom. This is actually an important distinction as well for potentially people that are selling online. These retailers typically do not have any online presence. So there's no real like Amazon risk. There's no Walmart.com risk. There's no risk that the product would show up on another site less than where you're currently selling it. And that's actually something that a lot of people ask me about because they want to make sure, just given how strict, Amazon is, for example, that they're not going to get screwed essentially, So that is something that's important. You can technically sell on some of these websites, but usually you have to opt into that. And a lot of these brands don't because they don't want to have that risk with undercutting another retailer online.
Right. Is there any other fee when let's say Walmart or Target, they decide to work with you? Like, for example, the promotion, like a shelf fee?
That really depends by retailer. Walmart is pretty good with that. They typically don't have very many fees, if at all. Target has some. They have, they call them different things, but essentially it's really just like a pay to play. Like a slotting fee is what typically it's called. Once you're accepted, you have to pay a fee to basically put your product on the shelf. It's a way for them to make more money. It's very common in the industry, unfortunately. So you'll see that at a lot of retailers. Grocery stores have a lot of fees like that. And then yes, if there's like a retailer like Target, you would be required to pay for the marketing, pay for the promotions. That is part of it. The beauty of the off-price retailers, TJ Maxx, Ross, Burlington, is that there's no fees at all. Even better than that, most of the time they will pick up the products from your warehouse, which is not common in the broader retail landscape. You have to negotiate that with Walmart, Target, and oftentimes they won't do it. However, with TJ Maxx, Marshalls, all the ones I mentioned, if your products are in the United States warehouse, they will 99% of the time they will pick it up, which is, again, that's a cost that you're saving because you don't have to ship it to their warehouse. So that's another way that it can be a bit easier of a process. It's very clean.
In terms of retailer, we know there's two parts. One is just like traditional retailer, like Walmart purchase from you, but we also have a Walmart.com, Target.com. Is the same system or it's separate thing?
For the retailers that have a e-commerce platform, a lot of times what these retailers will do is they'll funnel you to their e-commerce site first. They'll say, hey, get on our e-commerce site, and then we'll see how you do on there. That happens quite a bit. So that process is different. If you're going immediately into stores, you can also opt in to go online as well. They're going to want you to do that. But yeah, it is typically a slightly different process. Each of these retailers have typically two different models. One's more of like a dropship model where you're on their marketplace. That's usually the easiest and quickest way to get on. If you already have a warehouse that can fulfill orders, then you can just basically do that on Walmart.com like you are on Amazon. Or if Walmart's bringing you into stores or they believe in the product a bit more, they will buy the goods and then resell them themselves on their own website. So it really varies. There's a couple different options.
Yeah, right.
But the Walmart.com, Target.com piece, if you want to get on their radar, that is a great way to get started because you can basically do it.
So what's the pro and the cons compare those two?
It depends on how well your product is selling elsewhere. Con is that if you go on Walmart.com or Target.com, which again is easy to do, if you don't perform or you're not performing very well, the likelihood that they bring you into the stores is very low. So if you're confident in your product and they're not going to bring you in the stores right away, then yeah, it makes sense. Because if you think you can perform well on their platform, then that's proof to them that the Walmart customer might buy it in stores as well. But if you're not sure, then you can kind of get in this sort of gray area where you're on their site, but you're not good enough to go into the stores. So I talk to people that prefer both things. If they're confident in their e-commerce presence, they're confident in their ability to sell online, then they'll go online first, and then they'll take that risk. But I also talk to a lot of people who are basically like, nah, I'd rather just go into the store. Why would I take away from my Shopify business? Why would I take away from my Amazon business? let me keep doing what I do best. And then I will continue to try to push for in-store selling as well.
They give you a chance. If you waste this chance, it will give some trouble. Negotiate with this in the future.
Correct.
Okay, so let's talk about like timing, the right timing for e-commerce seller to get into retailer. So from your perspective, what's the best timing for e-commerce sellers to seriously thinking about, okay, it's time for talk to Walmart, it's time to talk about Target?
Again, there's sort of the same sort of chance and risk. If your brand's doing very well and you're trending, you're performing well in your category, or you're trending, and you have data to back that up, and I'd say you should shoot your shot. I think if you have the ability to invest in the inventory that's going to be required to go in, or raise capital to do so, then I think it makes a lot of sense. You go for it. It's sort of the thing though, you want to put your best foot forward, right? You don't want, if you're not really doing that well, like Walmart is not a last resort, right? You need to really make sure you're ready. Because once you go into Walmart, you only have one shot to make it work, right? If it doesn't work, they're going to remove you from the stores the next year, and then you're kind of never going back in, right? So it depends on how well your product's doing. So I would say if you're trending upwards, you're making progress, and you have proof behind it, and you think that the Walmart customer would like your product, and your product would fit well within the Walmart assortment for whatever category you're in, then yeah, I think it's a good idea. But there's definitely some homework that needs to be done there. From a price point perspective, if you're selling a $100 beauty product, even if you're performing really, really well, you might not be a good fit for Walmart, because the Walmart customer is the everyday American customer who doesn't have a lot of money, who doesn't have the ability to spend $100. They're looking for a $10 beauty product, right? I would say the same thing goes for sort of the off-price space as well. But again, you have a lot more leeway there. It can happen pretty quickly, and you can almost use that to try and learn more about your product in the retail landscape. That's one of the things that we do with a lot of e-com sellers. They come to us and say, hey, we like TJ Maxx. We almost want to use it as a means to try something out. TJ Maxx is much more willing to try products, try different, SKUs, different formats. So if you have a good brand, but you're not quite sure yet, you can use that channel to potentially find out a lot more information about your business. And so that's a little bit more different. You don't really need to be as sort of well equipped to enter into off price. You still want to succeed. You want your product to do well. It's not going to save you. And this is actually something I think is worth mentioning, because a lot of brands that are D2C don't understand this. All these retailers, what they tell me every single time is that just because you're in our stores does not mean that you're going to generate sales. We do not generate the sales. Your brand needs to actually bring the customers in and generate the customers. So just because you're in Walmart doesn't save your brand, right? You can't just assume, oh, I don't have to market the product. I'm in Walmart. There's millions of people walking in the aisles every day. That's not really how it works. And they do not like when brands sort of rely on them to try to generate sales. It's super important that you feel comfortable with your ability to market your products offline. That's another thing that's important as well. We can talk about that.
Yeah. If I want to keep my brand equity, I want to keep my premium branding, off price can be a better option. People still feel like I'm a good brand, but I just have some item is off price. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it traditionally has not been that way. I'll be the first one to admit it, but increasingly it's actually getting more like that. And a lot of people in the space don't realize that. This is specifically happening in beauty. If you go into a TJ Maxx today, you will see brands that are in Sephora, that are in Ulta, that are the most premium, sought after, brand that Gen Z girls would absolutely die for. And they're in TJ Maxx. And traditionally that would be like, what? Like, why would you do that? Your brand is so luxurious and it's so, people love it. Like, why would you stoop down to that level? But what's more important is how strong your brand is. You have to understand how strong your brand is, number one. And the value in the deal is actually something that people are not looking at in a negative way. So before, price and value were important, but it wasn't to the extent it is today. I'll give you an example. Like Glow Recipe is a beauty brand that's incredibly popular. It's not crazy expensive, but it's more masstige, let's call it. I think it's in Ulta, Sephora, or one of those two. And, in 10 years ago, you would never think that brand would be in TJ Maxx. Now it's in every TJ Maxx all the time, because the brand's so powerful and people will literally like run over each other trying to get it in the stores, because it's at, 10% off, 20% off, 30% off. So again, it's you have to take it on a brand by brand basis, but that the erosion of brand equity in TJ's, I think, is a myth. And I think if you were really smart about leveraging it as a strategy, I think it can be increasingly valuable. Because again, Gen Z, millennial, new age consumer, they don't have that much money. Like the American today, any age, just has less disposable income. So they value the deal more than potentially seeing their favorite brand at a reduced price. So once brands realize that, they realize, okay, yeah, I still need to be careful and mindful about where my products show up, but it's actually not a bad thing necessarily if I'm able to acquire that customer in a TJ Maxx for 40% off. That's actually a net positive.
Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about pitching to buyer. If we have good sales on Amazon or on Shopify, that's a good thing. Is there any other thing the buyer will look at?
I think an understanding of the category is important. So if you say, oh, my phone case brand sells really well, that's great. But what is different about your brand versus what I currently have? So it's really important for your listeners to know, like, you have to be educated about the products that are in the store. Because if I come with my phone case brand that's doing $10 million a year, the buyer might say to me, well, that's great, Matt, but how is that different from what I currently have? How are you going to bring more people into the category? What they don't want is necessarily, it depends. Usually what they won't want is that you're going to switch from one phone case to another. That's fine, but you're not really bringing anyone new into the category. There's no increase in dollars, right? So they want to say, hey, that brand's doing well, and they understand where they're going to fit in the category. And they can say, we're going to bring new shoppers in, and here's how we're going to grow the total category. You have to think about it like this. The buyer who is buying the product for the retailer, their KPI, if you will, their key performance indicator, is the amount of money that is being sold through their category, right? It's the profit that, it's that literal, the revenue. So you don't want to necessarily trade another brand's revenue for yours. I mean, that's good for you. It's not really good for them. So it's all about incremental revenue. So it's really important that you come in, you have a strategy. You say, hey, look, this is our brand. We're doing well. Here's our social media presence. Here's how we market the products. Here's the marketing we could do for you. But here's how we're going to show up in your stores. And here's how we're different. That understanding of the landscape goes a long way. And I think that's something that a lot of e-com brands miss because it's not really their world, right? They're not used to going into a Walmart or understanding that category. So it's really important that you come in and you're educated about the category so you can make a compelling argument about why you deserve to have space on the shelf.
Got it. So online influence would be a good plus. Is there any other else? Like what about international data? Like for example, some products go viral in Asia or in Latin America. Does that help?
It does. Depends on the category. If you're like a Korean beauty brand, for example, like that makes sense. If you could say, hey, or a C beauty brand in China, like that makes sense. And you could say, hey, we're the number one selling skincare brand in China. That is valuable. It's not as valuable, but it's valuable. Most of the time, the US sales data is going to be the utmost importance. But if you are in this sort of trending white space or you're in a new category that's a little bit different, or obviously if you're like a Korean snack brand, like, it makes sense to pull that. And also because I think that it used to not be that way. And I think it is a bit more important now because the international influence on the US consumer is unbelievable and it's continuing to grow. Again, K-beauty, like anything, Asian food trends or all kinds of stuff. The influence of like Latin American and Spanish, Spanish speaking countries and what they're bringing and all, the rise of the Hispanic population in the US. There's so much there. So it really depends on the category, but yeah, you should definitely come with some information to support that as well.
Mm-hmm. In terms of pitching to buyer, there will be two strategies. The first one is I have a product, so I'm just trying to find the better retailer fit my product. But there's another way. I can find the retailer I really want to work with, for example, Target or Walmart, and I just develop a new collection to fit their needs. So which one you would recommend?
Probably the first one. They're going to want your best selling item. Ideally, they're going to want this product that has made you popular online because that's going to give them the best chance of it succeeding in your stores. But it depends. If you have a more expensive item and you're really popular online, you could go to Walmart and say, look, we can't sell you this product. It's too expensive. But we came up with this new concept. It's actually at a $25 price point, which is where all the other products in this category sell for you. We think this can work. I would say normally option one, But, it depends on your brand. If you're a more premium brand, it does make sense to potentially find some sort of sub-brand, sub-line to offer. So where you still get that sort of essence of the brand, but it's at a price point that's more palatable for that customer.
Is any type of brand or product is not good getting into the retailer?
If the performance is not very good online, there's no real point in pitching it. Like, even if they do say yes, you're not going to do well in the store, which means that you're going to put up a lot of money to buy the inventory, sell it in. And if it doesn't move, they're going to kick you out next year, and you're going to have to pay for all that product to come back to you. So it's like a disaster. So yeah, I mean, you want to make sure that you're in a good spot and make sure that you have enough like performance and confidence and belief in your brand to actually succeed in the stores. And then price and value as well. I guess one other thing might be the packaging. So you have to make sure that the packaging fits within that category in the Walmart or Target or whatever store. For example, if you have like a beauty brand and you sell a 3-pack online, that's your biggest seller. And then, of serums, let's say a skincare serum, 3-pack, that's your biggest seller. That could be good. But if you walk into a Walmart, they'll probably have individual serums. So like, doesn't make sense. So that's another thing. That's like sort of, again, going back to like, you have to be educated about the retailer, right? You want it to fit within their assortment. So packaging and product sizing is important as well. Again, another example, like let's say I have a shampoo brand and 4 ounces or like 100 mil, 120 mil is my best size, right? And that does so well for me online. If I try to sell that in, the buyer might say, well, Matt, you haven't looked at the category. All of my products are 200 mil. Why would I bring, so I think that is a reason why they'd say no. It has to fit within their sort of what works for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. I'm not sure if you remember that like a few years ago, there's so many D2C brand, Shopify brand, they always say no to retailer, right? But they changed my mind for now. But what was the reason behind it?
The model of retail with the margins and the wait times, and the payment terms, they probably didn't think it was worth it. The cost of running ads and the cost of a direct-to-consumer store has gone up so much. It actually does make sense oftentimes to go into stores. It can be a more profitable sale. It's different, and it plays a different role, but it's kind of become sort of sexy again to go into
it's
the
just
stores.
Like a cost and a calculation, like the margin. If the ad is much cheaper than retailer, so people always keep running ads.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, why? Don't if it's not broke, don't fix it, or whatever people say, right? Like it's I think that's probably it. I think that there's been a bit of a retail renaissance of the last maybe 5 years or so, where it's just becoming cool again to be in stores, and people are starting to move back into the stores. They're still shopping online, and that will continue to grow, but they're also going back into stores. And these retailers have done a great job, like the big ones have done a great job of investing in their assortment so that cool brands are actually there. They're bringing in, especially Walmart, Target, TJ Maxx, Ross, they're bringing in like the socially relevant like brands. One of the big things that a lot of these retailers have been leaning into is creator brands, influencers, celebrities. They're investing heavily in those because for the most part, they tend to drive sales, not all the time, obviously, but if it's done well, they drive sales. And so people, that's a perfect example of like, it's cool to be in a Walmart, the best example of that would be like the creator, Mr. Beast, who's like the biggest YouTuber in the world. Like he's created this chocolate brand and some other stuff. And his, like one of the first things they did was they went into Walmart. I think also there's been sort of this learning from direct to consumer brands that like for something like Walmart, for example, there's so many people that walk through those stores. And I think, we're maybe, a bit blind to it, just living on the East Coast. But like all throughout the country, it's the number one shop for most people. So I think a lot of maybe D2C brands that are maybe focused on, in the LA, Miami, New York area, they might forget that and not realize that. And I think it's becoming increasingly clear that like, if you want to get your products in front of people, like these stores are the place to do it.
Do you see any good example case study going very successful from the retail strategy?
I think the one that first comes to mind is the brand Grunes, which is a greens gummy vitamin brand that just sold, I think, to Unilever for like over $1 billion. They did a great job of building a really tight-knit community online, sort of growing into a white space, which is the greens gummy. building a brand that was trusted, that was, really high quality, great, acquisition, retention strategies. And, they're selling these bag of, 30 servings or month-long servings for, $50 online, something like that. And that's a perfect example of like that product wouldn't work at Target. No one's spending $50 or $60 at Target. They're just not doing it. So what did Grunes do? They came up with it's either a 15 or 20 count, 20-day serving for, I want to say $19.99 or $24.99. Like that's a perfect example of like, hey, we're doing well online. We want to get into these stores. We want to grow. We want to find more customers in these stores. Most people that were buying that product before on Amazon were probably more like digitally savvy people that are buying everything on Amazon, or a younger consumer that's finding them on social media or online. How do we appeal to the everyday American? We bring a smaller pack size in a box and not a bag, so it fits perfectly on the shelf, and we sell it to them at a price point that makes sense. I can't remember which retailer they started with. Maybe it was Target or Walmart. I can't remember. But they did that. It worked. And they moved to Costco, then Walmart, then Kroger. And then they just sold. So that's the perfect example where they grew their community online. They proved that they were a really important growing space. And then they came to retail like in a thoughtful way. They didn't just slap their $60 bag on the shelf that no one was going to buy. They said, hey, where do we need to be to make this work? They put it in a box, made it look really pretty. And then, they sold the brand.
Oh, by the way, but terms is another thing seller need to consider, right? Terms.
Yeah, like payment terms.
Yeah, payment terms. Sometimes the cash flow will be a problem.
So that's probably one of the biggest differences is the payment terms. It's typically like 45 to 90 days, somewhere in between there, maybe 30 if you're lucky. That can be painful. There are services out there that offer financing, so it's not too difficult to get it. But that's a very different model. Think about from the time the product is manufactured. If it's manufactured overseas, it comes to the US, ships to Walmart, then the 90 days starts, then the 60 days starts. You could be out 120, 150 days, even more. So that is definitely something that you have to consider, the cash flow. And I would really treat the retail business like separately in terms of like the P&L, because every aspect of it is different. So it's super important that you know about those things and you sort of model it out. Some of the things that we help with, we can go through like a bit of a model and a plan that we have. So you're ready to take on those tough payment terms.
Yeah, right. Is there any other mistake you see the people working with the retailer are making?
Not having a good promotional strategy. If promotions are a part of the business, not having a good promotional strategy. You need, as I sort of alluded to earlier, you can't rely on the stores for sales. You have to generate the sales in the store. So your brand, the ads that you're running, have to support that in-store program. So it's highly recommended that you're running like Walmart ads or Target ads that drive people to that site. You might not see the data, but you need to make sure that you're selling well in those stores. So it's super important that you're supporting your retail program with marketing support. Now there's ways that you can do that in the store. Again, promotions, coupons. You can run ads on Walmart.com. All the retailers have retail media services, but at the same time, it's also important that brand marketing is supporting these retail partnerships as well.
Like you are running your own ads online or offline by yourself.
Yes, you could do. You see in New York, trucks go by all the time with like an ad on the side or billboards or stuff like that. That's really important because otherwise, you have to support the partnership. Yeah,
cool. Any other suggestion for seller who haven't ready to get into retailer, or for the seller is already in this space?
If you're scaling online, keep going. I don't think it hurts if you want to get into Walmart like next year or the year after. Just, you can do some cold emailing, find the buyer on LinkedIn and just reach out and be like, hey, I have this brand, would love to chat with you. Sometimes they're going to ghost you. Sometimes they'll say, yeah, let's chat. There's no harm in having that conversation, but just make sure that you're either going to be ready soon or you're going to be ready or you're ready now. Because again, you don't want to go in there and just not be prepared. But I don't think there's any harm in at least kind of poking around, seeing if there's interest. And then also in the meantime, if you are trying to get into one of these big grocery stores or an Ulta, Sephora, or Target, or Walmart, definitely consider like a TJ Maxx, Ross, Burlington program. It can be as little as one in and out. You can see how it works. You can figure out which SKUs work best. You can figure out if the product's resonating with an in-store consumer. Or, you could build it into a 6-7 figure revenue stream, and there's a lot of reasons to do that. You can move through inventory that's in the warehouse. You can get your production lines moving more quickly. There's so many benefits to it. Devaluing the brand or losing brand equity it's just not really a thing anymore. Again, we're talking about most goods. If you're some super premium product, then maybe not. But for most everyday products, it's not really a drag on your brand equty.
And it's also good PR, good advertising for your Shopify, for your own
free marketing. It's your free marketing. As long as you're breaking even on the deal or you're making a little bit of money, you're getting out there and you're acquiring a customer potentially. At TJ Maxx. And the goal is that the next time that they're in Target or the next time they're online, they're going to buy your product again. So you're really acquiring that customer and potentially making money at the same time. And that customer, again, is the same one that's walking in Walmart, same one that's walking in Target, same one that's walking in Whole Foods, Ulta, or Kroger. There's so much overlap now because these off-price stores have really upped their game. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it. And I think some more brands should really focus on it.
Yeah, amazing. Okay. So in the end of the show, can you introduce everyone, what company service you can providing and how you can help the brands get into this space?
Yeah. So again, the business is called Common Shelf. We are a sales agency that helps mostly in the off-price space. We also help with Walmart and Target. We're a service provider, so we're there to sort of help you along the way. We can help pitch the products, help manage that business for you, help you ship it, help you invoice the retailers, do all that stuff across most mass market and off-price retailers. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content about retail and stuff like that, and always happy to engage with people on there. I have a newsletter called the Shelf Report. And as part of being on the show, happy to, for the first 10 people that to follow the newsletter after the show within your community, happy to send them a Loom video where I basically just give them a free 5-minute audit of their brand in terms of what I think. And yeah, that's about it. Always happy to chat with people about retail.
Yeah, that's cool. And you are not just serving e-com seller. You also can serve another retailer, not retailer, retail shop, right?
Yeah. Brands already in retail that want to expand into more retailers, e-com brands, Shopify, Amazon. If you're performing well on one of those platforms, there's a good shot that you have the opportunity to at least approach some of these retailers. So always happy to talk to people about it.
But not drop shipper.
If the product is typically a U.S. warehouse is required. It depends. I'm always happy to chat with people about it, but it does make things a lot easier if your product is in a warehouse here. Okay. It's not a no, but it can be a bit more difficult. That's all. It depends on the category, really.
What about if I have my own supply chain, I'm running my own factory. Can you also help them?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we love to do is work with manufacturers and try to build brands with them. So if you own a gummy vitamin factory and you're like, hey, I want to build a brand for TJ Maxx, I'm your guy. I will happily help you with that. I think there's a huge opportunity for that. It's sort of private label. It's not technically private label for the retailer, but you're basically creating a brand for, a retailer. That's one of the biggest opportunities I see right now, especially with manufacturers. So I have a lot of conversations like that every day.
Okay, amazing. All right, thank you for your time, Matt, and it's a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for sharing, and thank you everyone for listening. See you guys next time.
Yes, thank you very much.